In a small scenic mountain village surrounded by rolling hills and thick forests, the air was crisp, the views serene, and life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone and change was as rare as a snowfall in summer. But nestled among the picture-perfect homes and friendly neighbors was a story of tension, misunderstanding, and an unlikely hero, Rocky, a sickly pit bull. Rocky was a dog unlike any other in the village. His body was lean and frail, his ribs visible under his patchy coat. A deep, persistent cough often racked his body, and his bark, though weak, had a rasping, guttural sound that grated on the villagers' nerves. He had been living with Kevin, a retired army veteran who had brought him home one rainy night years ago. Kevin, who had seen more than his fair share of pain and hardship during his service, had found Rocky abandoned near a construction site, shivering and whimpering in the cold. Something about the dog's eyes, a mixture of pain and resilience, had stirred something deep within him. "I couldn't just leave him there," Kevin would often say when people questioned why he kept such a troublesome dog. He needed someone, and maybe I needed him too. But to the rest of the village, Rocky was nothing more than an unwanted presence. His bark was a disturbance in their quiet lives, his cough a constant reminder of sickness and decay. Children ran from him, fearing his appearance. Adults avoided Kevin's house altogether, unwilling to be near the dog they labeled a nuisance. One particularly harsh winter, rumors began to circulate about Rocky. Some claimed he was aggressive, though he had never bitten anyone. Others whispered that he was a bad omen, that his constant coughing was a sign of bad luck. The village council even considered asking Kevin to move away, but Kevin, fiercely loyal to his companion, made it clear that he wasn't going anywhere. "Rocky's got more heart than any of you," Kevin once shouted during a heated argument with a particularly vocal critic. "You just don't see it because you're too busy judging what you don't understand." Despite Kevin's defense, Rocky remained an outcast. Even on his daily walks, the two of them were met with cold stares and muttered insults. Yet Rocky never retaliated. He simply followed Kevin, his tail wagging faintly, as if the approval of his owner was all that mattered. One day, Dr. Peter, the village's beloved physician, stopped by Kevin's house for tea. Dr. Peter was known for his kindness and his tireless dedication to the community. He often treated patients for free or for whatever small amount they could afford, earning him a special place in the hearts of the villagers. Unlike the others, he didn't view Rocky with disdain. As Kevin poured him a cup of tea, Dr. Peter observed Rocky, who was lying by the fireplace. "He's not what they say, is he?" the doctor remarked, gesturing toward the dog. "Not even close," Kevin replied, his voice heavy with frustration. "They don't see what I see. They don't see how he saved me as much as I've saved him." Dr. Peter nodded, understanding the bond between man and dog better than most. "Sometimes," he said thoughtfully, "the ones who seem the weakest have the strongest hearts. It just takes the right moment for the world to see it." Little did they know, that moment was closer than anyone could have imagined. As the days turned into weeks, Rocky's condition didn't improve, but neither did it worsen. He continued his routine with Kevin, accompanying him on walks and curling up by the fireplace in the evenings. The villagers continued to ignore him, their judgment as unyielding as the mountains that surrounded them. One evening, a group of children dared each other to approach Kevin's house and provoke Rocky. Armed with small stones, they crept up to the fence and began throwing them at the dog. Rocky, startled and confused, let out a few weak barks before retreating to the safety of the porch. Kevin stormed out, his face red with anger, and the children scattered, laughing nervously as they ran back to their homes. "That's the kind of ignorance we're up against," Kevin muttered to himself as he comforted Rocky. But even Kevin couldn't have predicted just how deeply Rocky's existence would touch the lives of those who despised him, because Rocky, despite his illness and the hatred directed at him, carried a quiet strength that would soon become impossible to ignore. It was a crisp morning in the mountain village, a day like any other. Birds chirped lazily, and the villagers went about their routines, oblivious to the events about to unfold. Far up on the winding mountain road, a sleek silver sedan sped recklessly into the village's outskirts. Behind the wheel was Alfred, a young man in his 20s, his face pale and drenched in sweat. He had spent the previous night driving through treacherous roads, desperate to escape some inner turmoil he couldn't seem to shake. His hands gripped the wheel tightly, and his foot pressed too hard on the accelerator. The road narrowed, curving dangerously close to the edge of a steep cliff. It was here, in a moment of misjudgment, that Alfred lost control. The car skidded violently, the tires squealing as it collided with a wooden pole. The impact sent the vehicle spinning, and it came to rest precariously on the edge of the cliff, half its body hanging in the air, threatening to plunge into the abyss below. The sound of the crash echoed through the village, startling residents and sending a flock of birds scattering into the sky. People stopped what they were doing and turned their heads toward the source of the noise, but none dared to approach. The sight of the car teetering on the edge was too terrifying, and they feared any movement might send it plummeting over the edge. Up on the hill, Kevin was enjoying his morning coffee on the porch, Rocky resting at his feet. The sharp sound of the crash made both of them jump. Kevin's military instincts kicked in, and he grabbed his walking stick, preparing to investigate. But before he could even take a step, Rocky had bolted. Despite his frail frame and labored breathing, Rocky ran with a determination Kevin had never seen before. His barking, usually dismissed as an annoyance by the villagers, now echoed through the streets like a rallying cry. Some of the braver villagers began following the sound, curiosity overcoming their fear. When Rocky reached the scene, he assessed the situation with remarkable clarity. Inside the car, Alfred was semi-conscious, his head slumped against the steering wheel. The vehicle creaked ominously, the weight shifting with every slight movement. Time was running out. Rocky, with no hesitation, leapt through the shattered window, his body scraping against the jagged glass. Inside the car, the air was filled with the smell of gasoline and the faint sound of Alfred's labored breathing. Rocky nudged him with his nose, letting out a sharp bark that seemed to say, "Stay with me." Using every ounce of strength in his frail body, Rocky began pushing against Alfred, trying to move him toward the passenger side, which was still on solid ground. Alfred, disoriented but aware enough to realize what was happening, weakly tried to help, using what little strength he had to shift his weight. Outside, the villagers watched in awe, their disbelief holding them in place. "Is that Rocky?" one of them asked, his voice tinged with a mix of astonishment and shame. Kevin arrived moments later, his heart pounding as he took in the scene. "Come on, Rocky," he whispered under his breath, his hands clenched into fists. Inside the car, Rocky managed to push Alfred far enough to allow him to tumble out of the passenger side and onto the gravel road. The villagers rushed forward, pulling Alfred to safety. But as they turned their attention back to the car, their hearts sank. The vehicle shifted again, the weight distribution changing as Rocky tried to climb out. For a brief moment, his eyes met Kevin's. There was no fear in them, only determination and a kind of calm acceptance. With one final bark, the car gave way, tumbling down the cliffside in a deafening crash. A fiery explosion erupted in the distance, and a heavy silence fell over the crowd. Kevin fell to his knees, his face pale and his hands trembling. The villagers, who had once despised Rocky, stood frozen, their expressions a mix of horror and disbelief. Alfred, still weak but conscious enough to understand what had happened, began to cry. "He saved me," he choked out, his voice trembling. "That dog, he gave his life to save mine." The words hung in the air, sinking into the hearts of everyone present. The once despised Pitbull had just performed an act of bravery that no human had dared to attempt. The crowd slowly began to disperse, their faces marked by guilt and sorrow. Kevin remained by the edge of the cliff, staring at the spot where the car had disappeared. He whispered softly, "You were always a hero, Rocky. I just wish they could have seen it sooner." The village sat in stunned silence as Kevin, the retired soldier, began recounting Rocky's life to a group that had gathered near the edge of the mountain road. The grief in Kevin's voice was palpable, but he spoke with pride, his words painting a vivid picture of the misunderstood dog who had become a hero. "Rocky wasn't just a pet," Kevin began. "He was my family, my companion in the loneliest days of my life. When I found him, he was nothing but a skin-and-bones stray, shivering in the rain outside my home. I brought him in, nursed him back to health, and he gave me a reason to wake up every morning." His voice wavered as he continued. "But he was sick. No vet could tell me what was wrong, but it was something serious. His coughing and barking weren't out of anger or aggression. They were cries for help, but no one wanted to hear them. And still, despite everything, Rocky loved this village." As Kevin spoke, Alfred, the doctor who had narrowly escaped death thanks to Rocky, joined him. His bandaged hands trembled as he placed them on Kevin's shoulder. "Rocky didn't just save me," Alfred said, his voice cracking. "He saved this entire village. If I hadn't survived, there are lives here that would have been lost in the days, weeks, or months to come." The villagers began murmuring among themselves, guilt and shame evident in their expressions. They had spent years treating Rocky like a pariah, blaming him for every little disturbance, dismissing him as nothing more than a nuisance. Now they saw him for what he truly was, a guardian, a protector, a silent observer who had given everything for their safety. One of the younger villagers, a boy no older than 12, stepped forward. His voice was small but resolute. "We need to do something for Rocky," he said. "We can't just let his memory fade." The idea sparked a wave of agreement among the villagers. They decided to erect a memorial in Rocky's honor, a lasting tribute to the dog who had given his life to save one of their most beloved members. The central square of the village, a place Rocky had often been chased away from, was chosen as the site. As the weeks passed, the villagers worked together to create a statue of Rocky, a life-sized bronze figure that captured his spirit. It stood tall and proud, one paw lifted as if ready to take action, his face turned toward the mountain road where he had made his final stand. On the day of the statue's unveiling, Kevin stood before the crowd, his military posture firm despite the tears streaming down his face. He placed a small plaque at the base of the statue, engraved with the words, "To Rocky, our guardian angel, hated in life, loved in memory, and forever a hero." The crowd was silent, many wiping away tears as they reflected on the lessons Rocky had taught them. Kevin stepped back, saluting the statue in a gesture of deep respect. As the years went by, the story of Rocky's sacrifice became a legend in the village. Parents told their children about the dog who had taught them the true meaning of bravery and kindness. Kevin, despite his grief, found solace in the fact that Rocky's memory was being honored. Alfred, inspired by Rocky's heroics, dedicated his life to spreading awareness about compassion for all living beings, starting an outreach program to help sick and stray animals in the region. He named the program Rocky's Legacy, and it grew into a nationwide initiative, saving countless animals and educating communities about empathy and kindness. Even as new generations came and went, the statue of Rocky stood steadfast in the village square, a reminder of the sick pit bull who had turned hatred into love and indifference into admiration. His story became a part of the village's identity, proving that even the most misunderstood among us can rise to greatness when given the chance. The villagers continued to live in the shadow of Rocky's bravery, but his legacy didn't fade. It grew stronger with each passing day. What started as a simple story of a misunderstood dog who had given his life for a higher cause became a cultural touchstone, not just in the village but across the region. Alfred, the doctor who had been saved, refused to let Rocky's sacrifice go unrecognized beyond their small community. He began chronicling the event in vivid detail, crafting a heartfelt narrative about the lessons in love, sacrifice, and redemption that Rocky had left behind. This story, first shared in a regional newspaper, captured the hearts of readers far and wide. Requests poured in for Alfred to speak about Rocky, and soon he was traveling to schools, community centers, and animal welfare events, spreading Rocky's message. Back in the village, Kevin found a renewed sense of purpose. He started caring for other stray animals, offering them the love and compassion he knew Rocky would have wanted. His small home became a haven for creatures others had abandoned, cats with mangled tails, dogs too scared to approach humans, and even an injured bird or two. He named this informal shelter Rocky's Retreat and welcomed anyone in the village who wanted to learn about animal care. The memorial statue became a site of pilgrimage for animal lovers, journalists, and tourists. Some brought flowers, others left handwritten notes thanking Rocky for inspiring them to act with greater kindness and courage. The village experienced an unexpected boost in tourism, with local businesses thriving as a result. What once had been an overlooked mountain community became known as Rocky's Village. Inspired by the outpouring of support, Alfred decided to expand his efforts. He collaborated with Kevin and other like-minded individuals to establish the Rocky Foundation, a non-profit organization aimed at improving the welfare of sick and neglected animals. The foundation not only provided medical care and shelter for animals in need, but also educated people about the profound connection between humans and animals. As time passed, the foundation grew into a national movement, It offered training programs for veterinarians, grants for animal shelters, and even funded research into animal health. Alfred's poignant storytelling about Rocky's heroics remained central to its mission. His speeches, often accompanied by images of the memorial statue, resonated with audiences everywhere. Kevin, despite his advancing years, remained an integral part of the foundation. He shared stories of his life with Rocky, reminding people of the dog's tenacity and unconditional love. His tales had a way of touching even the most hardened hearts, inspiring many to volunteer their time or donate to the cause. Meanwhile, the younger generation in the village grew up with Rocky's story ingrained in their identity. Children played near the statue, often pretending to be Rocky saving the doctor. The legend inspired them to treat animals with kindness and to value acts of courage and selflessness. One particularly enterprising teenager named Mia decided to make a documentary about Rocky's life. With a handheld camera and the support of her family, she interviewed Kevin, Alfred, and villagers who had witnessed Rocky's heroic act. The documentary, titled Rocky, the Hero We Didn't Deserve, went viral after being uploaded to social media. It sparked a global conversation about animal welfare and the ethical treatment of pit bulls, a breed often misunderstood and unfairly stigmatized. The impact of the documentary was profound. Donations to the Rocky Foundation soared, allowing it to expand its reach internationally. Educational campaigns were launched to dismantle stereotypes about pit bulls and other maligned breeds, proving that every animal, regardless of its background, has the potential for greatness. As Kevin approached the twilight of his life, he found comfort in knowing that Rocky's story had transcended their small village. He was more than just a dog, Kevin often said. He was a reminder of what we can be when we act with love and courage, even when the world misunderstands us. The villagers continued to celebrate Rocky's legacy each year on the anniversary of his sacrifice. They called it Rocky Day, a day dedicated to acts of kindness, whether it was helping a neighbor, adopting a stray, or simply sharing a story that inspired hope. Years later, when Kevin passed away, he was laid to rest near the statue of Rocky, his lifelong companion. His tombstone bore the simple inscription, "Together in spirit, forever." Visitors to the site often remarked on the profound sense of peace that seemed to emanate from the place, as if Rocky's spirit still watched over the village. Generations came and went, but Rocky's story remained a cornerstone of the village's identity. What had once been a tale of tragedy and loss had blossomed into a legacy of hope, love, and resilience, a timeless reminder of how one life, no matter how small or misunderstood, can change the world.